Thank you all for your perspective, and we would really like to hear from each of you about some coping strategies related to the things we just talked about. As this crisis goes on, it gets harder and harder for each of us. So, Bob, would you start?
Okay, yes. So, yeah, some coping strategies that we all know about, but what I'm finding is that it really helps for us to remind each other of some of the things that we may know but lose sight of in all of this change. So the first is that self-care is surprisingly important, that actually sleeping enough, eating well, getting exercise, not drinking too much, all of those things are incredibly important in terms of establishing a kind of physiologic baseline of well-being that supports emotional well-being. So get out every day, make sure you move, make sure you do some things to support your physical health, because activity supports better mood. The other important thing is to pay very close attention to what you are allowing into your mind. One of my Zen teachers is fond of saying that what we let into our mind shapes our minds. And what I'm talking about is how we absorb the news. So if you find yourself taking in news a lot of the day, that's going to be agitating. Particularly visual media is designed to agitate us. It's designed to keep us hooked. So curate what you put into your mind. Ideally, read the news and read it from the most trusted sources. Go to the CDC website for information about the pandemic. Do not look at screens in the 2 hours before you want to go to sleep. So be sure not to look at news late in the evening, because it's bound to be agitating. You would be surprised at how easy it is to lapse into taking in content that's going to agitate us. In terms of the problem of too much closeness, I would just say that we need to remember to give each other more space than we're used to. So my wife and I work all day. She at her desk, I at my desk, and we don't see each other much. We get together for dinner and we literally ask, how was your day? Even though we're in the same house all day long. Same with our 28-year-old son who's here with us. So what that means is giving each other more space than we're used to. That does not mean there's a problem in the relationships. That means that's what we need. The other thing is that for these problems of too much enforced distance, reach out to people, be more proactive than you might usually be, so that if the thought occurs to you, oh, I wonder how so-and-so's doing, act on it. Don't let those impulses pass without doing something about it. And finally, notice when you begin to feel so anxious or so down that it's really getting in the way of your life. And think about reaching out for help. People are doing lots of good mental health care virtually. It's available. And so don't hesitate to reach out, perhaps first through your primary care doctor or through a friend or a colleague. I make referrals all the time, as I'm sure Patty and Henrietta do as well. But don't let yourself shy away from getting help if emotional distress is getting in your way. So now I will turn it over to Henrietta, who's got some tips for the kids in our lives.
Thanks. Well, I think key, and it's already been said, but I think it's worth repeating, is the first thing is that the adults in kids' lives need to take care of themselves in all the ways that Bob talked about. And the analogy that Marion used as putting on the oxygen mask before we put the oxygen mask on to kids is a really good one. Adults need stability well, we all need stability, but kids need adult stability in their lives, and adults that will model good ways to handle stress. Obviously, I think communication is really important with kids. It's important to recognize that that their lives are equally as stressful and anxiety-ridden as ours, and remember that they don't have the tools yet or the experience yet to handle it as well. I think that as grandparents, we always think of grandparents as being totally non-judgmental. So I think that if you grandparents reach out to your grandchildren and ask them, how are they really doing? You know, that would be an important thing. Bob has already mentioned limiting news and social media exposure. That's really important. Of course, kids are on the social media much more than we are. It's important to talk to them about how much they're using that. Structure and routine is good. And then, you know, urging them to get outside, doing some mindfulness exercises, anything to calm themselves down. Also, kids love taking action to help. So things like writing cards to nursing homes, doing other kinds of crafts and things. Action will bind the anxiety, and kids really want to make a difference, and they can. And finally, the thing that I would add is, as parents or as grandparents, to expect more acting out, more meltdowns, misbehaviors, and isolation on the part of kids. This is a really hard thing for them to be going through. So some of it might be a normal reaction to it, but trust your instincts. If you really think that your child is in deep trouble, as Bob said, there are people available to help you out, and help is still available over the internet and through hotlines and such. So Patty, can you add to any of that?
I don't have so much to add. I think that we're all on the same page about most of it and the importance of self-care in all those ways. I think one of the things that comes up as people talk to me about their kids is you have to accept that you can't make it all better.
Right.
And, you know, and I think it's really helpful for me to help the parents in my practice do that, as well as with the kids in my practice, to just say, in whatever way I can think of, yeah, it sucks. You know, I think the first week, every kid I was then talking to, most of the kids I meet with don't want to do it by video. I don't know why, but they all said the hardest thing is not knowing what's going to happen. Yeah, and kids, you know, who don't even talk about their feelings much, were able to say that to me. And I think that's the advice that we have to give to ourselves too, to accept that this sucks. I mean, not all the time, but it can be really hard, and we can do the kinds of things that help us feel better, but we can't make it all better, and we're not at fault for that. We shouldn't feel good. We shouldn't feel so guilty that we have it better. We should just accept how we feel. And I also add to the importance of being able to ask for help from, you know, maybe from friends or family or professional help as we need it. But I certainly think it's so important, as everyone was saying, to stay in touch with the people that we care about. You know, I've been sustained through this whole period by my family and friends, many of whom are actually here today, and not even all of whom are in the class of 1973. But we want to hear from the people who are here, who are in the audience, and what they'd like to talk about more.